When shopping for toys, one of the tools retailers provide are aisles designed to have certain toys. Well, except for the state of California, but I'm not touching that one with a 10-foot pole. The reason that aisles are set up by toy type or even gender is because kids like certain toys, and it's up to the retailer to choose what toys go in these aisles. But the aisles, as I noted, are set up for retailers or by retailers specifically as tools for the buyers. Not the buyers buying the toys from Mattel and Hasbro, but rather the customers, the customer buyers, the children or the parents or the collectors. It helps to know what aisle to go to, and it makes the gift giving or buying experience easier. If you're looking for Barbie, you just look for pink, because that aisle is probably going to have Barbie dolls on it. And this is one of those brands that tends to actually own its own aisle, because it's been around for so long. But other aisles are bracketed by age or play pattern. So things like preschool, or in this case, the wheels aisle, where you're going to see cars that involve, well, things that drive. Or the action figure, or what's also really actually called the entertainment aisle. And this one is the one that changes the most, but it always has product that's usually tied to the latest movies and shows and, well, really big brands that are part of pop culture. So when putting objects, toys, in aisle as a tool to help customers buy a product and to find a product, retailers divide up the aisles by toy type, usually tied to a play pattern, a way children play with toys, in order to make people shopping for gifts have an easier time doing so. And in big box stores, you're really only dealing with about 20 feet per aisle or per play pattern. So 10 feet on either side of the aisle that is dedicated to that type of toy. And we know that the action figure aisle right now is, kind of on fire because there's a lot of blank space. And, fans are saying, well, why can't they just fill this in? There's so many choices. And I wish it was that easy. But the toy buying process is it's a long period of time. It actually starts back about 2 years before the product's on shelf. The toy production process starts 3 years, but as far as selling into retail, that process happens about 2 years. And it's kind of one of those things where hands up, who wants their toy in a big box toy aisle? Well, everybody does, because this is a direct path to revenue and having attention brought to your brand. So it starts with pitch, not that kind of pitch, this kind of pitch, where you are going to connect with the retailer, buyer, the toy buyer, if you will, for Target or Walmart or Myers, Toys R Us. It used to happen at New York Toy Fair, but now New York Toy Fair is a bit more of a publicity show. The actual buying happens months, although years earlier, and usually officially kicks off at Dallas Toy Fair, which is in fall, October and November of each year. And this is when the toy buyer for all the major retailers will go through and they will view the showroom of the toy manufacturer. And this is everybody from the small toy companies to the big toy companies. And I mean, obviously, the larger toy companies tend to have more colorful displays because they have more money to put into them. And there are certain brands that are considered evergreen. And these are brands that more or less have a straight path to not quite a guarantee to be in aisle, but they at least have a financial record of year after year performing well enough to justify their retail space. So it's not quite the whole, not go to jail, but go to retail aisle, go directly to retail aisle, do not pass go. It's kind of like that, but it's also sort of like the legacy admissions in colleges, but it is a very, very fragile relationship. And it can be broken very quickly because once a brand doesn't perform well, it's no longer seen as evergreen. It's now seen as just either a fluke or a shot in the dark. There are brands like things like Ninja Turtles that perform year after year, or Transformers, and they're constantly having new toys and new entertainment. Star Wars used to very much be an evergreen brand, guaranteed 6 to 8 feet in aisle. But as I said, it's a very fragile relationship, and recent entertainment and toy sales have underperformed. And once you have a bad year, retail essentially says, well, everybody wants to be in the aisle. Maybe I should be looking at giving some of this precious 20 feet to a different brand because we want the best product that sells the best in our 20 feet. So their list of brands that are eligible for those 20 feet, and believe me, everybody from the tiniest toy company to the biggest one wants as many of that 20 feet as possible because that's your route to the largest number of customers. A lot of people tend to look at nostalgia as a source of evergreenness, but that's not really so. Nostalgia does appeal to adult collectors, but as I've noted, they're just not as big of a buying group as we tend to think online. And if looking at something like He-Man, the last time he was at retail before current was 2001, and that toy line didn't do well. It didn't perform to sales expectations. And retailers, much like elephants, never forget. They do know, okay, this brand, the last time we had it, didn't perform. So taking a chance on it again usually takes 15 to 20 years, hence He-Man being back in the aisle. Now, smart companies also look at the toy aisle as a long game. And much like chess, they're always thinking several moves ahead. And yet, go watch a chess video if you want. I'm not going to get into all of that strategy, but if you're not playing chess, you're missing out on a lot of fun in life. Anyway, the point is, they're playing the long game in the sense that they're thinking, how could I use a brand today to maximize the amount of space I'm going to have tomorrow? And Masters of the Universe Origins is a perfect example of this. This was a brand that was put out at retail to essentially stake a claim, to say, okay, we're going to have a nostalgia-based line, and it's going to hold our place in the aisle, hold your place in line, if you will. And that way, we have a guaranteed place once the bigger line hits a year later. Because, as we all know, looking at retail, there are not just one, but two Masters of the Universe toy lines that are connected to entertainment right now. There's two different shows on Netflix. Take that, She-Ra. So Origins did a successful job of keeping that place at retail for the entertainment-based lines. And that's the key, entertainment. Because when you have entertainment behind your brand, it's a much straighter path to being chosen by a retailer for some of that precious, precious, precious 20 feet of space. So again, using He-Man as an example, back in the 80s, it didn't have entertainment, at least when it launched. It had really colorful art, it had mini comics, but there were years before it was going to have a cartoon show. So that was different times. Nowadays, and especially in the 90s, if you look at a lot of the toy lines that came out during that decade, if you had a movie, you more or less had a guaranteed slot in the toy aisle. It has changed a bit over the last 20 years, but having a movie is absolutely a quicker path than having a brand that's not tied to any kind of content. It allows the retailers to take a chance on that brand because they know a movie studio has already invested millions of dollars, if not hundreds of millions of dollars, promoting and creating content. Another thing that affects brands is politics. And I'm not talking about, Democrats, Republicans, Whigs, Tories. I'm talking more about office politics, or really, I guess I might call it industry politics. And yes, like every major industry, there are office politics. And this can be a big reason why a brand gets into aisle. Maybe there's a relationship between the toy company and the buyer. Maybe there is a personal relationship between two people. It could be a company relationship, but there are definitely office politics that play into how certain brands get an aisle. And of course, there's a personal bias, or maybe I'll call it a fanboy bias, where brands are curated or hand selected to have a spot or even a premium spot at retail. A good example is Stranger Things. Had a very, very large end cap at Target about 2 summers ago when season 3 was out, which is a little odd since it's definitely an adult show, with things that scare children, such as people dressed up in sailor costumes, things that children really shouldn't be seeing. So why did they have such a big end cap at Target in the kids area? Well, it's because the buyer for Target was a huge fan of Stranger Things. You see so many Stranger Things exclusives and so much aisle space dedicated to this content simply because the buyer really liked it. And that happens all the time. This is just one example. So if your buyer is a huge fan of some property, hey, you might have a better chance of getting your toy line listed at that retailer. Again, 20 feet, 10 feet on each side of the aisle, that's not much space, and everybody wants to be part of it. Your best bet is to have a movie, and to have a hit movie, and a movie with a brand that's recognizable. But there are principles that will affect how good your movie and Toyland will be. And that's actually why I get to plug Spector Creative, because that's what we do. I love working with clients to help them make their scripts more toyetic, to sell more toys, and to reach more children and collectors. So look us up, spectorcreative.com. Share this video, it helps the algorithm. Leave your comments below, I always answer every one, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching.